I'm RJ Nestor, productivity consultant and Tana ambassador. And when I work with leaders, one of the pain points that they often bring up is that preparing for meetings can be a challenge, because if you wait until it's right before the meeting, then you're scrambling last minute to make sure you have your notes, make sure you have an agenda, make sure you know what you want to discuss with the people that are in the meeting. And I've actually solved that problem in my Tana for Action workspace. And I'm going to demo what I have built in Tana for Action here. By all means, feel free to buy Tana for Action, but I'm going to demo it in such a way that you can see how you would be able to build the structure yourself. So I want to be able to capture these agenda ideas when they arise, but then surface them as the discussion points when either I run into the person with whom those discussion points are associated with, or when I have the meeting that those discussion points are associated with, the agenda, essentially, of that meeting. So first of all, let me just show you how it works in the way that I have it built in my Tana for Action template. So if I were to have, I have a person, a meeting coming up, I'll just do a call. So if I have a call coming up with John Doe, or let's do Joe Smith, since he was the first one that came up there, and that call is coming up on the 18th of April. So I have this call with Joe Smith, and then I remember, right now, whenever I talk with Joe, I need to make sure that I bring up the horses and the way they keep getting out of his pasture. Discuss horses getting out of pasture with Joe. And so I'll hashtag that discussion point, which comes, as I said, in T4A, and I'll say, I could do this one of two ways, but I'll just say I want to discuss it when I see Joe. I'm not even worrying about the upcoming interaction. Just whenever I see Joe, I want to talk about that. When I go into this call, topics to discuss horses getting out of the pasture with Joe. That shows up automatically. It's there. And if, say, for instance, I run into Joe somewhere just, on the street, and I happen to be able to have my Tana app with me, I can just pop open Joe's thing there, and I can see discuss horses getting out of pasture with Joe there as well. So it shows up when I see Joe just in the context of Joe, but it also shows up in the context of these meetings. And similarly, if I were to have a meeting coming up, let's say meeting, and we'll say this is the weekly stand-up meeting. It's just me and my business. I don't really have stand-ups, but I know other people do. And let's schedule this meeting for Monday here at 10 a.m., and we'll say it goes to 11. And so that meeting is scheduled. I'm not going to bother putting the participants here. Maybe I would bother at some point, or a related project. I don't have anything necessarily for that. But I'll show you now, if I have a discussion point, it can also be associated with a meeting. So let's say I need tell team about the Henderson project, and I say discussion point. I can associate that with an upcoming meeting. And you saw with that interactions that Joe's call was also there, because that's also an upcoming interaction. That way, when I go to the meeting, bam, the thing I need to discuss is there. And you'll especially note, since I haven't shown you how it's built yet, you'll note that the topics to discuss isn't just a random everything that needs to be discussed with anyone. It's just it's only the ones that are associated with that particular meeting or with that particular person are showing up. So let me show you how that has to be built in order for that to work. Since you are capturing discussion points, you want to have fields inside discussion point, that super tag discussion point, that link you to the things that you are capturing them for. So you saw me do that. The way that's built here, if I go into configure tag for discussion point, I can open up the content template, and you'll see there's two fields, upcoming interaction and participants. You could use them both, but for any one discussion point, you're probably just using one or the other. And with participants, I'll look at it first because it's a little simpler. If I right click and choose configure field, you'll see that is just set up right now for me to an options from super tag type, and person is the super tag. So if you needed it, to be more specific than that, if you wanted to just be team members or just colleagues, or for whatever reason you wanted to narrow it down, you could. But in this case, it's just using any individual can be considered a participant for this case. Okay. And then the other one, upcoming interaction, this one's got a little bit more layer to it. If I right click and choose configure field, you'll see, first of all, it's an options type where I've turned off include auto-collected. That just keeps me from accidentally putting things in there. And you'll notice there's nothing predetermined, but there is in sources, and it's a search. And it's a search specifically for not just any interaction, but specifically any interaction that is greater than for relative date yesterday. What that means is it is today or in the future. So I'm not going to, the beauty of that and the build of that, and you can kind of see, I'll stretch this over this way. My screen's zoomed in, so I don't know if it'll fully stretch out. It'll mostly stretch out. Greater than is on the top level there, and then scheduled on, and the field value for scheduled on is for relative date yesterday. What that means is if it's greater than yesterday, that means it's today or in the future. And what that means is if I have a whole bunch of meetings and a whole bunch of calls, that's not going to clutter up this field. So when I go to capture, a particular note for something, it's only going to show things that are coming up in the future. So with those two fields of on this super tag, I can capture discussion points for any person or for any interaction. And the beauty of the person one is it will also display not just in the context of that person, but also in the context of any upcoming interaction you have with that person. There's one little thing that is a slight caveat there, and that is if you're having more than one participant in a meeting, it'll only catch the first one. That's a limitation of Tana, at least as of the recording of this video on Thursday, April 10th, 2025. But it's still pretty useful and pretty effective. So that's just the capture side. So I'm capturing it in one of these fields. Within both the other super tags there, within something that's an interaction or something that's a person, I need to be able to surface the things, the topics that are discussed, that I want to discuss. So I'll put a person here just so I can get access to the super tag. I'll open up configure tag. And then inside here, you'll see it's not inside the content template, but rather advanced options inside the related content. Oh, hang on. I'm in my Tana for Action. I need to go to one layer further. Configure tag building blocks. It's actually in Tana for Action inside the person dashboard. You could build it inside person directly, but I put it in a separate dashboard so I can switch it on and off if I want to. Separate video for that. But the in here, in the related content, you see discussion points. And here's what the search looks like. It's simply looking for any discussion point where the participant is parent. That means it's on this, the participant is whichever person this is. Not a specific person, but whichever person we're currently looking at. That's who it's going to show. And not done. That gives me the power to, use Command Enter on Mac or Control Enter on Windows to cycle through to marking it done, and then it won't show up as a discussion point that's, upcoming anymore. And so that's all that query is. It's nothing super complicated. The one that is over inside the interaction dashboard, so I'll go down the path here of the way this is built in Tana for Action. So it's inside the interaction dashboard. When I configure this tag, you'll see the same basic search there. It still says topics to discuss, which discussion points works just as well, but I changed it slightly so it implies a bit of an agenda. This search is looking for any discussion point either associated directly with this interaction, or you'll remember it'll show the people as well, or where the participant is not the parent, but the participant field of the parent. Meaning, if I'm in a call with Joe Smith, that this participant and then parent.participants is looking at, then parent brings it up to the level of the call, and then participants brings it into the field value for participants. So Joe Smith will be there. If that's the person I have the call with. And so you can, pause or slow down the screen and let me actually close this here so I can stretch this over and you can see the full layout there. That's discussion point, and then inside or it could either be the upcoming interaction as the parent, meaning this meeting is we're talking about the meeting we're currently looking at, or the participants are parent.participants, meaning this meeting, and then we look at the field value for participants. That's how that is set up. And so that means that I have this whole workflow is just two fields inside the capture super tag, which is discussion point, and then two searches, one inside the interaction super tag, which is what I use for my calls and my meetings and that kind of stuff. That's just the way I have it built in Tana for Action. It can be called whatever you want to call it. And that search is looking not just at the meeting itself or the interaction itself, but also at that first participant of it. Is again, if there are more, it won't work exactly. That's a limitation of Tana. But if it's just a call with somebody, that's, a lot of your things are going to be one-on-one, and those one-on-ones are going to work beautifully. If it's not a one-on-one, if it's a full meeting or something, you can also use the other field, and the search inside the interaction will say, or it's associated directly with this interaction. And so that, that is fairly simple to build. It obviously requires a fair amount of Tana proficiency, but as long as you know how to use Tana to do that, you can build that on your own in just a few minutes. Now, I mentioned this is my Tana for Action template. Obviously, that's something you can buy, but I want to mention in particular, this sort of thing is something that I do a lot in Tana for Leaders, which is my live course. I don't run it all the time because it is live. It isn't, it isn't constantly happening. And then once it's in, once it's happening, you can't sign up for it. But you can check. I have a link in the down below, and I'll put probably the link on this video as I'm editing it as well. But Tana for Leaders allows you to build and customize your Tana workspace to exactly what your particular leadership needs are. You get Tana for Action with Tana for Leaders. And if you've bought Tana for Action first, you get it discounted from Tana for Leaders. But so this particular workflow will already be done. But for things like recurring meetings or things like, that you do meetings that happen regularly that you want to have specific, already built-in agendas for, in addition to being able to add other things, that kind of stuff has to be customized to your particular requirements. That's what Tana for Leaders is all about. It's an opportunity for me to help you both in one-on-one sessions and in group sessions build exactly the leadership toolkit that you need. So hopefully just walking through this will give you some ideas about how you can build your own way of tracking things you need to discuss with someone, or things that you have up for an upcoming meeting, which are essentially the same thing. And maybe you'll notice that there's a pattern to this that might extrapolate to a lot of other possibilities in the things you're building in Tana as well. I hope it's useful for that. If you need some additional help, you can find me in Tana for Leaders or just in the Tana community, and I'm happy to help.